You've been traveling the country, going through red districts, talking to voters, some who are on your side, probably many who aren't. My question to you is, has your prognosis of why the ticket lost changed after these conversations?
Well, I don't know if it changed. I think trying to assess this, and I think it's a healthy thing to do. I got asked right away, and it's an obvious first question. They said, would you have done anything different to be on this? First of all, the sense of gratitude I had to be on the ticket with Vice President Harris and knew what our mission was. We had about 100 days to prevent what's happening from happening. And I knew that was important. And this is look, there's no second place trophy in this. It's zero sum. But when I got asked, they said, would you have done anything different? Well, yes, we would have won. That's what I'd have done different. And with that being said, how do you assess this? And I think for me, what I'm learning going out there, and I don't know, like when I got asked, you're out here assessing, what the Democratic Party needs to do. I recognize I might be the last person you'd want to ask. I'm the guy that just got beat in this, a part of that. So I recognize that part of it. But what I am most interested in is that you run for these jobs to improve people's lives. I don't believe their lives are going to be improved. And I was out there to try and understand, why did you not believe that before November? Why did you not believe? And the folks I'm really focused on are those who stayed home, of why they stayed home. And I think what I came out of that with is, we talked about this a little bit upstairs with your students, that there's a lot of people that said, what difference does it make? They're all the same. And that's a pretty stinging indictment because I think we're very different. I have no intention of limiting people's reproductive rights. I do believe climate change is real. I think you should have the right to collectively bargain. I believe you invest in our children in education, and healthcare is a universal human right. So those are the things I talk about. But I think people are saying, yeah, that's fine, but we don't really have any of those things yet. And it became clear to me that there's some pieces that were missing out there, and I took it in Minnesota to do this. When you have political power, you better not just be banking it to get reelected. You better be burning it to improve lives. And this idea of, have we not done that enough? Did we not convince people? And why is it that people were questioning? Tens of millions said, I'm just going to stay home because things will work out pretty much the same anyway. What is left when you watched President Biden navigate a global pandemic, navigate us out of a recession that could have been, put us in a position to do this in a way that was talking about a soft landing and improving people's lives, and yet still a majority of Americans didn't believe that. So that tells me there's a disconnect, and I think it behooves us to soul search a bit, listen, go out there, especially these areas. My district in Minnesota is a great example of this. I won that district, and look, there had only been one other Democrat since 1892. I won in 2006. I won by 30 points in 2008. In 2016, I won by less than 2 points, and Donald Trump won by 17 points. What changed in southern Minnesota? Farm Fields, Mayo Clinic, Mankato State University, Mankato, these places. What changed during that time? And how did we go from overwhelmingly have those people's support to not only not having their support, having their disdain in a place where these were my neighbors? So I'm out there, whether it's Wheeling, West Virginia, or up in Youngstown, Ohio. We went down to Houston, Texas, or actually Fort Bend, down to Omaha, and asked these folks, what is it? And one of the reasons going out there too is I was hearing it. People were like a primal scream of, my God, stop this. This is craziness. What can we do? And asking what we can do. And that's what I'm asking them, what they want to see us do.
And some of those voters, Democrats or people, probably voted for you as governor and for Donald Trump as president.
They did.
So it's an interesting overlap to try to reckon with.
That still. So thousands. But that was still there. But look, the folks here at the Institute who know these numbers, it was not that unusual that you would see a scatter plot that upwards of well over 100+ districts a few decades ago would vote for a member of Congress from one party and the president from another. That continued to shrink. And by the time my last election in 2016, that year there were 4 districts that Donald Trump won by 15 points or more that also elected a Democrat to Congress. 3 of them were in Minnesota. We were just the last state to succumb to this, that it went, but then we became, and the other one was in Pennsylvania, not surprisingly. So you had these districts where people were still splitting their ticket. That's basically the last time that they've done that. And that's a troublesome trend, in my opinion, that you used to see conservative, Republicans crossing over from, or liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats used to be on each side of that scatter plot. Now we've pulled apart, and that's really troubling. And it is pretty much split on urban-rural divide, and that's a real challenge.
And Governor, this is a strong, clear Democratic message that I heard from you a lot when you weren't the vice presidential nominee. I don't know if you guys know, you could not run away from Tim Walz on TV, whether you wanted to or not, on cable. There was a time where I was flicking channels in the newsroom, and you were doing a lot of hits,
Yeah.
right? And then you became the vice presidential nominee.
And you thought I disappeared?
Well, I don't think, can I be frank? It wasn't just me. It was a lot of people, not just reporters, but people I've been talking to this entire semester saying, where the heck did Tim Walz go? So my question for you, and there are a million ways for us to get into this conversation, is, was that your choice?
No, yes, I said the choice to be on this ticket, the privilege of being on it. When you sign up for this, I'm a team player. I'm with it. And there's folks that I recognize are smarter than me. They analyze this. You put your input in. Running a campaign that had never been run before, 100 days, in the situation we were at, running against a very unusual opponent on the other side. Mm-hmm. And look, my job was to do it. Look, I knew I was on the ticket. I would argue because we did a lot of amazing progressive things in Minnesota that improved people's lives. But I also was on the ticket, quite honestly, because I could code talk to white guys watching football, fixing their truck, doing that I could put them at ease. I was the permission structure to say, look, you can do this and vote for this. And you look across those swing states, with the exception of Minnesota, we didn't get enough of those votes.
But you could be giving them permission on TV every day. You could have been messaging that way, and that isn't necessarily how it shook out.
Well, yes, but I also said I understand myself. I said I think I'll give you pretty good stuff, but I'll also give you 10% problematic. And so somebody's got to make the decision here to handle some of this stuff and to make it in. Those are just decisions that were made. And I think after the fact, it is not second guessing or anything. I think it's fair to go back on and look at this. Look, we had the most qualified person who'd run for president in this country's history at the top of the ticket. That in itself should have got this thing won. We had, in my opinion, and you can disagree with me, I think history will prove me right, a very unqualified person on the other side. And you have to determine, how do you get those hits? What was the best way? Did it make sense to continue to, call him weird or call that out, or make this pitch that we are significantly different and our policies can improve your lives? And there's people that make those decisions, and whether it's right or wrong or not, I guess history will make that case.
What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think this was going to be hard. I think that we are going to have to think, why have we lost the self-identity that the Democratic Party is for personal freedoms, they're for middle-class folks, they're for labor rights. How did we lose it where people didn't self-identify that? And how did we get to a point where people didn't feel like this was an important enough election to get out there and vote? That I don't know. Me being out there more, no, I doubt that would have made the difference. I know it probably wouldn't, but I do think what I learned from that, just candidly, was if you leave a void, Donald Trump will fill it. And so I think you've got to be in every place as often as you can in every single day of every minute to make that pushback, because I think the oxygen gets sucked out of the room and you get defined. I said this, you will get defined and your policies will get defined very quickly, because I don't think any one person right now in where we're at in America by themselves can be the counterweight to that noise that's there, that the attention they get. So I do think the lesson I learned on this is I think you're better off to do more, to be out more, to be in every forum you can be in.
So how is Tim Walz filling that void right now? Is it this listening tour, or what else is there for you?
Well, I'm governing in Minnesota, the state that ranks first in healthcare. Mara Healey's around here somewhere. I'm going to tell her that. Our competitors, we look to Massachusetts as being a peer state in this, in terms of education, access to education, biotech research, higher ed. My God, look where we're sitting here. And so I think one of the things is that I think this is a time to show an alternative model of governing and what governing can look like. If you elect us, here's what you're going to get. Your children are going to get enough food to eat. You're going to have the highest quality of health care. You're going to see personal incomes rise. You're going to see home ownership increase. You're going to see some of those things. So I think that's one way. And then I think because of the platform that the vice president afforded me and being a governor, going out to these places that don't get to see that. And I'll have to tell you, this town hall thing, it is a bit of me being an a-hole to these people. I'll acknowledge
What do you
it.
mean?
Well, I acknowledge this, that it came out from their leadership, don't do town halls, you're just going to get yelled at. Well, I served in Congress, and I was there in the summer of 2009 and 2010 when the Tea Party was birthed, and we were debating the ACA. And I stood in front of thousands of angry constituents for hours and took the questions, not like, oh, look at you, you're a tough guy or whatever. It was my job. I was elected to do it. But I had no problem doing that because I could defend the ACA. I could defend why I voted for that. And I saw these guys, their leadership tell them, don't do the town halls, you're just going to get yelled at. Well, you need to come out and tell us why cutting Medicaid's a good idea. You need to come out why you think you can deport people without due process. If you believe in that stuff, just answer it. I felt really personally, as a former member of Congress, that that was wrong. And I also felt I had the ability that if you're not going to show up, I'm going to make this really unpleasant for you because your constituents are going to come. And I'm telling you, for some of you in here wondering if it matters to members of Congress. These people can read a paper faster than anybody. When you're looking for one name, that's all they do. They went, oh, God, there's my name in the paper, and they're yelling at me.
Yeah.
It matters to them about how that's being done, and there's the capacity, especially in the districts we're choosing, that there's going to be a big impact on people. And I'll just make the case. We went down to Omaha. That's a district that the vice president won by 10 points. That one blue dot that's out there in Nebraska, their member of Congress won. That was one of the very few ones. Voted for Kamala Harris. They voted for this guy to be in Congress. And I went down to kind of hammer on it, and I see this weekend he's going to spend more time with family, it sounds like, what he said. That's how this works. That's how this works.
It's like a form of resistance, kind of a pressure campaign from the outside, in a way.
Yeah, and I'm just there to join that resistance. I've said this, that people are coming to these town halls not to see me, I'm going to see them. They're doing it on their own. You show up or not, they're going to be there. I'll guarantee you that. And they're going to yell at Democrats who don't show up too, which I think is actually a valid place to be, that there is, we were talking about, is the resistance. It's not a 1 million person march, but I can tell you these town halls are not performative. People are coming and they're angry and they're saying it. And I asked in Youngstown, you're not supposed to ask, I said, how many here have never been to like a political event or rally? Because the assumption is, if you're Republicans, they're all being paid, checks or whatever. But I kind of thought it would be a lot of just really geared up Democrats. About half the people raised their hands, said they'd never been to one. And that showed me that those people who stayed home from the last election or who we weren't engaging with, they might not be ready to vote for us, but they're ready to listen to what's happening. And I think that's our opening at this point. And so it's real. It's not performative. Folks are angry. They want to see something get done. They're not convinced. I'm not convinced at this time that they're ready to vote for us, but I think they're ready for something different.
Are you talking to other Democrats about this? Because
Yeah.
it can't just be Tim Walz's war
No.
to wage on your own. And it can't just be, you could tell me, Cory Booker doing a filibuster on the floor.
It matters. It matters. And look, I served in Congress, so I'm like, some of you say, oh, do you miss Congress? No, I'd rather eat glass. No. But the people who are at Congress is really important right now. And the people who dismiss that, first of all, dismissing the physical ability to do what he did, I think that's a whole other subject.
Sure.
But it was about tangible resistance at a time right after the vote on the CR that felt like nothing was happening. I think it mattered. And I think whether it's Bernie Sanders in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho with AOC doing it, is that changing things? Is it passing any legislation? No. But I'm convinced, what I say is, I think every Democrat needs to be out there, every independent, and I would say every Republican who cares about rule of law in our institutions should be out filling the lanes, because I don't think any one of us can suck up the oxygen of Donald Trump, but I think if everybody's in the lane. And if your cup of tea, as I said, is doing podcasts with folks, then do the podcast.
Like Gavin Newsom.
That's right.
He has a very popular
Thank
podcast.
you for bringing that up.
Sure.
Yeah, no, and look, there's been some contention around this. I said this. I think it's healthy for us. It would not be my choice to go on a podcast and listen to Steve Bannon talk, but it would not be my choice. But I got to tell you, Gavin Newsom's getting people to listen to that. I know what Gavin Newsom can do, and he's out there. He's the governor of the 4th largest economy in the world. He has something to add. You can disagree with that, but all of a sudden now we're talking about Democrats. Now you might say, yeah, but we're talking about the wrong damn stuff. Well, that might be true. But here's what I feel like. We got to fill every single lane. And if there's one that's better than another, then let's all pick that lane and do more of that. But just sitting back in the silence of doing, we're counting on status quo. That's the biggest thing that you mentioned, I'll go back to the learning something on this is.
Sure.
The intense frustration with the status quo. There was an article, it's the 100 days of the Trump administration. I know it's like, if I ever have 100 days to live, I would spend it in the Trump administration because it's like a lifetime, But they asked Aredis County in Minnesota, a rural county of all the things, that is up near the Canadian border, being punished by tariffs and things, agriculture being under threat, lack of FEMA, all the things are going to say, you're putting up with a lot of hurt. And the people said, yeah, but it's worth it. It's worth it to get there. You've heard them say this. Nobody's jumping ship yet. But there was a guy, and they put in the paper, former Democrat, who said, look, I don't know if Donald Trump is right about the stuff he's doing. In fact, I think he's probably wrong on some of it, but I support him because he's willing to bust things up and give it a try. And that idea of he correctly identified their pain, and then he said he was going to fight for them, and then he picked the exact worst solution to all those things, making life worse for them. But the first two things outweighed the results, which is a really stunning thing to think about. And I think there's a fundamental here for Democrats. The competency and the getting things done, we heard this, and I did this with President Biden. That Infrastructure Act, if I'd have been in Congress when they passed the Infrastructure Act, I consider that one of the top 5 most influential votes of the last 3 decades, in my opinion, transformationally. It was huge. Nobody could get it done, and they got it done, and everybody just forgot about it. I said, not me. We had money for like a bridge. I put up the biggest damn sign that said, brought to you by Joe Biden. Don't forget it. Every day. And it sounds kind of silly, but I think there's this competency. We win on the issues, and we win on competency, and then we lose the message, and we lose power, and we get in this situation.